take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're flying.
Welcome back to another episode on Take Flight Podcast. This is a takeaway episode with myself, Pabilo Timbo, and today I'll be talking a little bit about raising finance for property deals and really sharing a couple of insights that I've personally experienced over the last few months, having successfully raised the funds required to purchase the deal that I'm currently working on and also raise the funds to also develop it. Now, in a previous takeaway episode, I spoke a little bit about Timbo Capital as an investment firm, where we are today, the asset classes that I'm looking at buying next, and how I want to deliver impact in the marketplace. And now that I've left my corporate job, how I'm thinking about scaling. And when it comes to scaling a property portfolio, bringing investors on board is absolutely key because you only have a certain amount of money yourself, despite how much you earn in whatever it may be, a business or a job. So bringing investors on board is very, very important if you want to scale successfully. And you can only look at some of the successful companies that have done it around the world. They've got a large pool of investors that they continue to sort of serve extremely well. So this journey has actually been quite interesting for me because you're talking to a natural saver. And I've mentioned, over the last couple of years on this podcast, how important it has been for me to pay myself first throughout my career. I've saved 40 to 45% and I've used that money to build a portfolio. And that's been successful and it's worked extremely well. And so, but now I'm in another phase of my career where I need to think about being able to scale up at a faster rate. And so it's been quite interesting to be able to compare and contrast saving versus raising capital from investors to do deals. In terms of saving, I'll just probably talk to two drawbacks as this topic is about raising finance. So when it comes to using your own money, I've mentioned on a previous podcast that actually it's more costly to use your own money than it is to borrow. So that's one thing. It's actually cheaper to borrow. And leverage other people's money. The second thing is it takes time to build up. So it depends on how much you're earning, but to build a sizable portfolio, if you're going to save your way to build a portfolio, it can take quite a bit of time. So those are the two, drawbacks. I'll talk about the advantages maybe on a different episode. And so it's been quite interesting because I started the fundraising process around middle of April to the end of April. The first amount of money came in towards the end of April. And then by the end of July, I had all the money that I needed in order to do this deal. So I raised about £250,000 for the purchase and also the development. I'll break down the percentages in a second. And that took 2.5-3 months. And so if I tried to save £250,000 in my corporate job, it would have taken me a couple of years to put that money together. So just the sheer speed at which you can raise finance from investors, bringing on the right investors is just not, it's not comparable. So this deal in particular, I'm actually buying a 3-bedroom property and I'm converting it to a 6-bedroom all-en-suite HMO co-living space. And the financing, or capital stack coming into this deal has been very much, in order to purchase it, I'm taking on a bridge loan, which is around 65%. And then I'm raising capital from investors to cover the remaining 35% as the equity. And I'm also raising 100% of the money is required to actually develop the deal. And then we'll increase the value, we'll reach a commercial valuation, and then we'll refinance at the back end, and then thus being able to pay investors back their money plus their return. It's been very interesting to go through. So in terms of tips, I've got 3 tips that I wanted to share. And as I continue to raise finance, I will share more learnings. The very first tip for anyone that's looking to potentially start raising capital is, for me, I found that it's so important to spend more time talking to the investor about what it is how they're going to benefit from this arrangement, as opposed to what my business is, the numbers that we've done, and then actually what, making it all about myself. And so I started off presenting the business, presenting the numbers, presenting the success, presenting the timelines. And actually, what I'm actually doing is I'm forgetting that the investor is thinking about their money, it being protected, and when they get the return, what they're going to do with it. So as time went on, I realized that my calls became much more focused on the investor. At the end of the 12 months, what is it that the return is going to be able to do for you? Can it help to accelerate your savings? Can it help you to actually improve something, home improvements within your own house? You'll be able to go on holiday. And so it was, and that's where, people have are much more engaged because you're focusing about them. You're looking at their needs, their pain points, and you're taking the attention away from you. Although, yes, you are the one providing an opportunity, it really is so important to understand what is it that they're looking for. They're probably not getting a very strong, attractive return where the money is currently sitting. They want to get a better return, but then helping them, walking them through what they can do with the difference, then really becomes where people became a lot more interested. So, I mean, I started off sending off, a deck with, a company deck, very, very corporate. And it took a long time in that deck before you actually got to what I'm actually offering. Most of the slides were about the area and about, the business today and the numbers. And I thought that was what people want to see before they can actually invest in something that's quite credible. So it's quite interesting. You're dealing with people, and at the end of the day, people are thinking about themselves and their money. So that was the first tip, or the first thing that I realized. The second thing I noticed when it comes to raising finances, never to assume you know where the money's going to come from. And so when I started the journey, I made a list of everyone that I knew and people and where I potentially thought the money would come from, work colleagues and friends, and who I thought had money based on what they earned. And actually, when I look at the final list of investors that I've actually invested, it's no one on that list is actually who I considered at the very beginning. And so what you may find is that sometimes the people that you think have money actually don't, or their money's tied up, or it's not currently the right time for them. And it's the people that you didn't assume would have money, a lot more quiet, or just never gave you the impression that they actually earned enough to save as much, are actually the ones that are interested. So it's you should never assume, and it's always good to keep an open mind. Sometimes what you may find, and what I found, is actually the investor comes through word of mouth, so it comes through a recommendation. So it's keeping an open mind and really understanding that the money can actually come from anywhere. And I think the biggest skill here, as an investor or someone who's looking to raise capital from investors, is just casting your net far and wide, talking to as many potential investors as possible, building relationships, building rapport. Because the other aspect to it as well is that people that I've spoken to may not have been ready to invest when I'm looking for the funds right now, but they may be interested at a later stage. So, no lead or no person you speak to is a waste of time, right? It could come good at a later stage. So it's really a long-term play when you think about raising capital and working with investors. But yeah, number two is never to assume. You never know where the money's going to come from, and you also don't know how much the individual may have to invest. They tend to say that nobody will give you all of their money, so they give you a portion in the beginning, and actually, as you continue, with the relationship, you find that they've got more money to give you. And I've experienced this myself. And the last point for me, and what I've experienced, is a client is not closed until the funds have been transferred. I've had numerous conversations with potential investors who have said, look, I've got £100,000. I like the interest that you're offering. And so, I'll be interested. And they've shown serious, genuine interest to invest. I've sent over the documentation, and for whatever reason, they've just gone quiet. Now, maybe I should follow up better, and I should be a bit more tighter on timelines in terms of coming back to me. But you tend to think, okay, I'll move on to the next investor. I've kind of got 100K kind of banked. And there were quite a few times where I, actually thought, all right, yeah, that 50K is already sorted because that person is good for it. I'll move on to the next person. And actually the money never came. So it's until a contract has been signed and funds has been transferred, it's not a done deal. It sometimes feels a bit weird because you're talking to somebody, they're telling you that they're very interested, and actually in the end they don't end up committing for whatever reason. But it happens, right? And I think I think what we have to keep in mind, those that are raising capital, is people are comparing your opportunity to other opportunities. And another opportunity could actually be leaving the money where it is, because they just know that it's there, they can access it. So you are competing against multiple different opportunities, even though you believe you're providing a really good opportunity. And then actually the last tip, call it a bonus tip, it just came to mind now as I'm sort of talking to you, is it's really important, I think, to have an abundance mindset when it comes to raising capital. It's there is, and I say that because if you're talking to potential investors and you're getting rejections, it could feel as if, at that moment in time, oh, there's not enough money, right? Who else do I need to talk to? It seems like everyone's money's tied up. And I actually felt like that in the very beginning stages. But I talk about the abundance mindset because there's so much money out there. You never know where it's going to come from. So it's just about keeping an open mind. You also don't know at what day that the opportunity will fall. But I talk about abundance because the the problem that we're trying to solve as an investor is we're trying to get capital to be best leveraged, and we're trying to get capital to have a better return on its money. So we're all actually aligned with the same problem that we're trying to solve. And I say that because there was a situation where an investor approached me and was looking to actually invest the money. I wasn't able to offer them a good enough rate compared to the other opportunities. And I said, look, if I was you, I would actually put your money with this particular investor because they can offer you a much better return. And so whilst I need money, I'm actually turning it away and actually putting it, because in my mind, my focus is very much, my mindset is this capital needs to go to work. It's not a personal thing. I'll be able to raise capital from somebody else, if not from you. And so that was a mindset that started to strengthen towards the end. It wasn't at the beginning, as you can imagine. I'm trying to get contracts signed, but as time started to pass and I started to realize that focus on people's pain points. Money's not secured until it's actually landed in the account. It started to build my confidence to understand, okay, there's a lot of money out here, and I just need to keep talking to enough people before I can identify the right investors. So if it's not always you take all the money that has been offered. You have to make sure that you can offer a certain amount, and if they're talking to somebody and they can actually get a better return for their money elsewhere, I think as an investor, as a custodian of capital, you should actually advise that person the best, because the aim of the game is to get capital to work as hard as possible, and it's not really about the individual. So that's just something I think that I think would serve me well moving forward. And so yeah, those are a couple of tips from raising finance. As I continue to raise finance throughout the remaining of this year for the next deal that I'll be working on, then I'll jump back on and share a few more tips. And until next time, I hope you guys look forward to the next Take Flight podcast episode.
Take off, take flight with you. Yeah, for we never fly, but we're flying.